everyone. In this session, we will be going to discuss about interval graphs, which is a well-known graph class in graph theory. So let me begin this discussion by defining what you mean by a graph. So a graph is defined to be an ordered pair VE, where this V denotes a set of vertices and E denotes the connections between pair of vertices. So let us consider an example first. So this is a graph on 5 vertices, namely A, B, C, D and E, and these lines in between those vertices denotes the edges or connections in between them. So in fact, we come across graph through many instances in our daily life. For example, consider a well-known social media, say Facebook. Mathematically, the structure of the Facebook can be represented by a graph like this, where each node denotes a member of the Facebook and two nodes are joined by an edge in the network if they are friends with each other. Now consider another social media called Twitter. As we have seen before, here also the set of nodes is defined by the members of the Twitter network. But in order to define the edges, instead of friendship, we have a concept called following. So how it is different from the friendship? So if you take the Facebook network, I am a friend of you, then it means that you are a friend of mine too. So here the friendship that defines an edge is a mutual one. So there is no significance of direction of the connection in between each other, right? But whereas in the Twitter network, this following concept is not a mutual one. So if I am following a particular celebrity, then it doesn't mean that he knows me even, right? So he doesn't have to follow me back. So hence in this network, the direction between the connections are very important. Hence we direct an edge from A to B if the vertex corresponding to A is following the vertex corresponding to B. Now in general, such graphs are called directed graphs, and those like Facebook, which doesn't have any direction on its edges, are called undirected graphs. Therefore, to summarize the following observation, we can say that the classes of entire class of graphs can be broadly classified into two subclasses, namely directed graphs and undirected graphs. This classification is based on the type of the edges in them. Now, these two graph classes are actually well-studied graph classes in the literature, and in this talk we will be focusing more on this undirected graphs, which itself is very fascinating. So now what you will do is that we can further classify the class of undirected graphs based on the underlying structure of the graph. So this is actually one snapshot of such a classification. I know that it looks complicated, but you don't have to worry about each of these subclasses that I have written over here, because today in this whole session we will be dealing with one of those subclasses, which is called interval graphs. It has to do something with the intervals on the real line, right? So let us see formally how it is defined. So a graph G is equal to VE is said to be an interval graph if each of its vertices V in V can be associated with an interval IV on the real line in such a way that whenever we have two vertices U and V in G which are adjacent to each other, that is joined by an edge in G, then the interval corresponding to U and interval corresponding to V, say IV, should have a non-empty intersection. And similarly, if there exists two vertices U and V in G which is not joined by an edge, that is whenever they are non-adjacent, their interval corresponding to IU, interval corresponding to V must be disjoint. So this is the core part of the definition of the interval graph, that is each vertices should be associated with an interval on the real line in such a way that whenever two vertices are adjacent, their associated intervals should intersect. On the other hand, if they are not adjacent, the intervals corresponding to those vertices must be disjoint. So this is the graph which have such an interval representation is called an interval graph. So let us look at an example. So here a graph is given to you. So now what we have to do is we have to verify whether this graph is an interval graph or not. So by the definition, what we have to find is a valid interval representation, right? So here I am proposing you an interval representation. So this is a real line over here, and we have to, so this is an interval representation that I am proposing, and what we have to do is that we have to verify whether this interval representation is valid or not. So by valid I mean that these conditions must hold, that whenever there is an edge, the intervals corresponding to those vertices should intersect, and whenever there is a no edge, then their intervals must be disjoint. So this is a condition that we have to verify in this interval representation. So here, as we can see, each of the vertices is associated with an interval. For example, A is associated with this blue interval, and D is associated with this purple interval, and G is associated with this interval, and so on. So every vertex has an interval on the real line. Now, if you look at the vertex A and C, they are joined by an edge in the graph. And when you look at the corresponding intervals, you can see that the interval corresponding to A is this, and interval corresponding to C is this, and definitely they are intersecting with each other. So, as per our condition, it is true. Now, if you consider another two vertices D and suppose E, if you look at the interval, D is this one and E is this one, and they are also definitely intersecting. So similarly, we can verify all the adjacencies between the vertices and their intersection. Now let's look at some non-adjacencies. So if you consider the vertex E and consider vertex G, then they doesn't have an edge in between them. They are non-adjacent to each other. And if you look at the interval, we can see that this is the interval for E and this is the interval for G, which are definitely disjoint. Similarly, if you look at C and G also, we can see that C is this interval and G is this interval, which are definitely disjoint. So in this way, we can verify that this interval representation is valid. So this qualifies to be a interval graph. So this is qualified to be in the class of interval graphs. Now, so here the interval representation was given to you, so it was easy to verify. And it was a graph on not many vertices, right? If it was a graph on some 6 or 7 vertices only. But now if the number of vertices is more, suppose that there are n vertices and n is very huge number, then to guess whether that particular graph has an interval representation or not is not that easy task, right? It will be very difficult. If I cannot find a representation, doesn't mean that someone else cannot. It can exist, right? So now an interesting question that we can ask here is that how can you characterize interval graphs in some other easy way? Easy way by means, it's like not by using the direct definition. How can you figure it out whether a particular graph belongs to the class of interval graphs or not? So when such a question we have to face in graph theory, then there is an approach that we generally use in graph theory is a forbidden structure characterization. So by forbidden structure characterization, what you mean is that suppose you are given a collection of graphs. In this instance, let me take I to denote the collection of all interval graphs. Collection of all interval graphs. Then, by forbidden structure characterization, what you intend is to find a collection of structures like S1, S2, etc., Sk, where k can also be equal to 1, in such a way that, if Si does not belongs to G for all I, then this should imply that G belongs to the class of interval graph. Conversely, if G belongs to the class of interval graph, then this should imply that Si cannot be in G for every I. So G cannot contain any of these structures. So in fact, what we have to find here is a collection of structures that forbid a graph from being the collection of interval graphs. So let us see what are the graphs that we have to forbid in order to qualify a graph to be in a class of interval graphs. So before going to that, I would like to define to you what you mean by a cycle on n vertices. So cycle on n vertices is actually a sequence of vertices v1, v2, etc. vn minus 1, vn, and again this vn will be connected to v1. So this even looks like a cycle, right? So it's actually a sequence of vertices where consecutive edges will be adjacent to each other, and finally the last vertex will be connected to the first vertex. So here note that whenever you say Cn, I mean an induced cycle on n vertices, which means that there won't be, other than these edges on the cycle, there won't be any other additional edges in between any of these vertices. So these are the only edges that we can find in the cycle Cn. So let me give you an example with starting with C3. So what will be C3? So it is a cycle on 3 vertices, which is what you can see is a triangle, right? Because this will be 1, this can be named 2, this can be named 3. So what you get is a sequence of 3 vertices, which is a triangle. So
So now what you will do is that let us try to find an interval representation for this triangle, because it is just a graph on 3 vertices. So let us try to find how it will be the interval representation. So in order to find the interval representation, what you have to do is that we have to associate an interval to each of these vertices. So suppose I am placing an interval 1 like this, then next I have to find the interval representing 2, which is also easy because we can put an interval like this, and in order to find the interval representing 3, we can put an interval like this, right? Because here it was quite easy because every vertex was connected to each other, so the interval representation can be any interval which have a common point of intersection, right? So this means that the C3 qualifies to be in the class of interval graphs. So it's a very it's like we are good, it's like we can find an interval representation for the C3, and hence it qualifies to be an interval graph. Now let us go to another step. Suppose I am considering C4. So how the graph of the C4 will look like? So it will be looking like this, right? So there will be one vertex here, 1, 2, 3 and 4. So this is a cycle on 4 vertices. So now, as we have done before, now let us try to find the interval representation of C4, whether it is possible or not. So it is also, let me start with the vertex 1. So here one thing you can note here is that it doesn't matter which vertex that I start with in order to find the interval, because every vertex in a cycle is a symmetric one. So no matter what I start with, I will be having the same scenario only. So there is no problem if I start with 1. Now when it comes to 2, I have to place an interval that representing 2. There are two possibilities, either I can put the interval 2 here and 2 here. Actually the cases are symmetric only, so let me put the interval corresponding to 2 over here. So it's like it's alright, right? Because 1 has to be adjacent with 2 and vice versa. So now according to the interval representation also we are done. So now let us come to the third vertex. So in third vertex you can notice that third vertex is adjacent to only with 2 but not with 1. So I need an interval which intersect with 2 but not with 1. So the only possible way to draw such an interval is by placing an interval over here. So this represents an interval representing to 3. Now when it comes to the fourth vertex, so what we need is a interval which intersect with both 1 and 3 but not with 2. So now if you look at the interval representation, you can see that now we are in a trouble. Why? Because I need an interval which intersect with this 1 and 3 but not with 2. So how it is possible to draw such an interval? Because whenever I make an interval intersect with both 1 and 3, it will get automatically intersect with 2, which I don't want in the graph, right? Because it is non-adjacent. 2 and 4 are non-adjacent to each other. So in this way we can conclude that the C4 does not have an interval representation, or in other words we can say that C4 cannot be in the class of interval graphs. So this is actually, so we got one such graph which has to be forbid from the interval graph. So it's not the case only for the C4, even if the graph has some extra edges. Suppose G is not actually C4, it has some extra edges like this or like this, and actually C4 is somewhat hidden inside the graph. So this is our graph G and C4 is somewhat hidden inside G, then also the same thing will happen, right? And it's like in order to, even if the extra vertices are there, in order to represent this subgraph, we need a proper interval representation, which is not possible as C4 itself is not in the interval graph. So what we can conclude from here is that if we can find a graph which has a C4 in it, or inside in it, or C4 itself, then it cannot be an interval graph. In fact, this is not the story with just C4. If you take any cycle on n, if you take any Cn, which is the cycle on n vertices for all n greater than or equal to 4, the same story will happen. So why? Maybe I can go till n minus 1, right? When I try to find the interval representation of a cycle on n vertices, so I can draw the interval representation till n minus 1 vertices, maybe like this, n minus 2 and n minus 1 here. But once the interval n comes, interval associated with n comes, it will create a problem. Why? Because this nth interval has to be placed in such a way that it intersects only with n minus 1 and 1, but not with any of the intermediate intervals. So such an interval representation is not possible. So what we can conclude is that one of the forbidden structure that we get here is Cn for all n greater than or equal to 4. This is a class of forbidden, one of the class of forbidden structures for interval graphs. So none of these cycles can be there in the graph. So we have to forbid all these structures. So from here what we got is a necessary condition for a graph to be an interval graph. It cannot contain any of the Cn's for n greater than or equal to 4. But now the question is that whether this structure is sufficient to characterize interval graph. That is just by forbidding Cn's from the graph of from some graph can we characterize interval graph. But unfortunately the answer is no, because we are not sufficient yet. We need some more structures in order to characterize interval graph. And one such structure is asteroid triple. So you don't have to be worried about seeing the fancy name of asteroid triple and all. So I will explain to you what you mean by an asteroid triple. So an independent set of 3 vertices is said to be an asteroid triple if each pair of vertices is joined by a path that avoids the neighborhood of the third. So here I have to elaborate some of the definitions here. So first I will do asteroid triple, as its name indicates, it must be a triple of vertices actually. So suppose x, y, z are a triple of vertices. Then asteroid triple, so how it qualifies to be an asteroid triple is that some conditions must be there. And the first condition that we can see here is that first of all they have to be independent. So what do you mean by independent? Independent means a set of vertices is said to be independent if no pair of vertices in that set are connected by an edge. For example, if you consider this graph, suppose this is your graph, then these 3 vertices forms an independent set. Why? Because none of the 3 vertices are connected to each other. Similarly, these 2 vertices are also forms an independent set because they are also not connected to each other. So such set of vertices in which no pair of vertices are connected by an edge is called a independent set. So here the first condition for the asteroid triple that is that it has to be independent. So now suppose this is x and this x vertex, and this is y and this is z, then there cannot be any edge in between these 3 vertices. Now let us see the second condition. The second condition is that each pair of vertices should be joined by a path. So what do you mean by a path? Path is actually a sequence of vertices v1, v2, etc. vn such that vi plus 1 is. So actually it's a sequence of vertices like this. v1 will be there, v2 will be there, etc. Like vn minus 1 will be there, vn will be there. So it is somewhat similar to the concept of cycle that we have seen in the previous slide. So in the cycle this vn will coincide with 1, but in case of path it will be just v1 and vn should be distinct. So that is a difference. It's like it will be just sequence of path. So these are the only vertices, only edges in this path. Now neighborhood of a vertex v means the set of vertices that are adjacent to v. So let us see what does it states is the second condition for a triple to be an asteroid triple is that each pair of vertices must be joined by a path that avoids the neighborhood of the third. So the what do you mean is that there should be a path from x to y which avoids the neighborhood of the third, which means that none of the vertices in this path must be a neighbor of z. So none of these vertices, every vertices in this path must be non-adjacent to z. They cannot be a neighbor of z. Similarly, there should exist a path from x to z such that every vertices in this path must be a non-neighbor of y. Similarly, there exists a path from y to z such that every vertex in this path must be a non-neighbor of x. It cannot be a neighbor of x. So if such a structure exists in the graph, then this triple x, y, z is said to be a asteroid triple. So I will give you an example of the asteroid triple. So these are the graphs which contains asteroid triple. So let us consider this graph. So here you can see 3 vertices x, y, z I have marked over here. So why this vertex forms an asteroid triple? So let us verify the condition that we have given in the previous slide. So first of all, the first condition was that they have to be independent, right? So it's very clear because they are independent, because x and y and z doesn't have any edges in between each other, so they are independent. So now the next condition was that there must exist if you consider any pair of vertices among them, there should exist a path which does not contain the neighbor of the third one. So I am naming this vertex also as A, B, C. Then here we can see that from x to y, there exists a path through A and B, where A and B are non-adjacent to the third vertex z, right? So we are done with xy, and similarly there exists a path from y to z through B and C, where this B and C are non-neighbors of x, the third vertex x. And in the same way, we can see that there exists a path from the vertices x to z, where which passes through A and C, where A and C are the non-neighbors of y. So we are happy, means like because we got all the conditions are satisfied for this x, y, z, and we say that this x, y, z forms a asteroid triple. As it forms an asteroid. So the same conditions can be verified for all the triple that I have shown over here. Okay, so now let us see what happens if a graph contains an asteroid triple. In fact, what we are trying to prove is the following. That is, let G be a graph containing an asteroid triple, say x, y, z, then G cannot be an interval graph. So in fact, we are proposing that this asteroid triple x, y, z is actually a forbidden structure for an interval graph. So let us try to prove this statement. So in order to prove this statement, we are using the contradiction method. That is, we know that G contains a asteroid triple x, y, z, which is an asteroid triple. So in fact, what we have to prove is that G cannot be an interval graph. So we assume to the contrary that G is an interval graph. Suppose that G is an interval graph. Then we should arrive at some contradiction. Let us see how can we arrive at a contradiction. So if G is an interval graph, then by definition we know that G has a interval representation, a valid interval representation, right? And so now what we will do is that we will look at the vertices intervals corresponding to these vertices x, y, z in that interval representation. So as it is an asteroid triple, by definition we know that these vertices x, y, z must be independent, right? So that was the first condition for a triplet to be an asteroid triple. It must be independent. Independent means they are non-adjacent to each other. So in terms of interval representation, what you can say about the intervals corresponding to these vertices x, y, z? So definitely they must be disjoint, right? So the it must be something like that. There must be three vertices x, y. So there must be three vertices x, y. These, if you look at the interval corresponding to three vertices x, y, z, then it must be something like this. But we don't know which of these vertices are x, y, and z. We don't know. But actually, it doesn't matter which is x, y, z, because according to the asteroid triple definition, it is somewhat, and just like the definition is very symmetric. So without close generality, I am assuming that this is x, this is y, and this is z. So now, what is the second condition? The second condition for this was the first condition was it is independent, and the second condition was that there should exist a path connecting any pair of vertices that avoids the neighborhood of the third, right? There should exist a path which is connecting any pair of vertices that avoids the neighborhood of the third. So now let us see. In particular, consider this vertex x and this vertex z. So let us see what will be that path. Let us look at the path connecting x and z that avoids the neighborhood of the third. So suppose x is equal to v1, v2, etc. vk, that is equal to vk minus 1, vk is equal to z. Suppose this was that path. Then now we have to look at the intervals on this path v1, v2, etc. vk minus 1. So how this interval can happen? It's like this v. If you look at the vertex, so this is nothing but v1 itself. Now if you look at the interval v2, it must be adjacent to v1. So it must be somewhat like this, right? It must be somewhat like this. And if you look at the interval v3, it must be adjacent to v2 only, not with v1. So it must be somewhat like this, and similarly it has to go on like this. And finally, we have to, in order to reach an interval vk minus 1 that is adjacent to z, we have to somewhere somewhere we have to, so if you go on like this v2, v3, v4, etc., at some point if you have to cross this particular section in order to reach z, that is vk minus 1, in order to reach the interval corresponding to z, this vk minus 1 should pass this particular point, right? At some point we have to pass this particular time interval. So what exactly happen is that there should exist at least some vi that happens. There should exist some vi that passes through there should exist some vi that passes through like this, and then vi plus 1 we can continue like this, etc., and then only we can reach an interval vk minus 1 which is adjacent to z. So what happens is that no matter this is like what the interval, what the vertex is here, it's like at some point there should exist some vi such that the interval corresponding to vi has to intersect with v1, because it is in the middle of the x and z. So there is no other way to go from x to z without intersecting vy, without intersecting with y. We cannot put all the intervals in between those path over here. So there should exist some vi which intersect with interval y, which means that this vi will be in the neighborhood of y, which is a contradiction to our assumption that all these vertices are not in the neighborhood of the third vertex, which is y. So which is a contradiction to our assumption that this x, y, z forms an asteroidal triple. So this means that, so as we arrive at a contradiction to the definition of asteroidal triple, what we were assuming at the beginning was false. So the G cannot be an interval graph. So hence we can conclude the forbidden structures for the interval graph as follows. So we are happy about one thing, that this we got the two kinds of forbidden structures here. That one is Cn for all n greater than or equal to 4, which is cycles on n vertices, and the second forbidden structure is the asteroidal triple x, y, z that I have defined before. So the one other good news over here is that these are the only these are sufficient, not only is necessary and but also sufficient conditions, because these are the only two structures that we need to characterize interval graph. So in fact, Lecker and Bolin in 1962 has proved that a graph is an interval graph if and only if it is chordal and asteroidal triple free. So by chordal graph we mean the graph which does not contain any of this Cn n greater than or equal to 4 as induced subgraphs. So and asteroidal triple free. So using these two forbidden structures we can characterize interval graph. Okay, so actually this was the first characterization for the interval graph that is given in the literature, that we can find in the literature. Now, so in fact in this presentation we have only proven the necessary condition of this particular theorem, because what we have shown is that if a graph does not contain any of this, if the graph contains any of these structures, either cycle or an asteroidal triple, then that particular graph cannot belongs to the class of interval graphs. So that is what we have shown in the proof. But the sufficient condition is also important, and this is like if you look at the original paper of Lecker and Bolin in 1962, you can see that the proof of the sufficient condition is very complicated and lengthy, so it requires more involved proofs and all. So I'm not going to right now, I'm not going to that proof the sufficient condition, so we can conclude the characterization over here by stating this theorem. So following Lecker and Bolin's theorem, there were so many other characterizations of the interval graph which exploit some other properties of it. For example, here we have used the forbidden structures to characterize interval graphs. There are some other ways also in which we can characterize. For example, like using the metric, reducing it to a matrix problem and all. So if you are interested, then you can look at the references in order to see more about it. But right now, so I would like to tell you about I would like to conclude the session by telling you about an application of an interval graphs. So it's like let us see why the interval graphs are important, and this application that I am going to tell you is precisely in the context of the forbidden structures. So and this is called as a so this problem is actually called as a Bird's mystery problem. So it's actually a mystery incident that happened in a library. So let us see what happened in the library. And so this is the incident. So 6 professors has been into the library on the day that the rare tractate was stolen. This rare tractate is actually a rare dissertation textbook that was in the library. So these 6 professors were there into the library on the day which this rare textbook has got stolen. So each has entered once, stayed for some time, and then left. If 2 were in the library in the same time, then at least one of them saw the other. So this is the fact that we know. So each professor has been to the library only once and stayed for some time and has come back. But the condition is that once if 2 people were there in the library at some point of time together, then we know that at least one of them saw the other. So if there are 2 professors in the library at the same time, then we know that either this person has seen this one or this person has seen this one. So this is the condition that we know. This is the fact that we know. So in order to find, so it is clear that as only these professors has been into the library, it is quite clear that one of them has stolen the book, right? So now the detectives came and questioned these professors about and gathered the following testimony. So they questioned the professors and they gathered the following testimony that who has seen who, like. So this is the testimony that they have got. The one AB has told that. So these are the 6 professors, AB, Bert, Charlotte, Desmond, Eddie, and Ida. These are the 6 professors, and this is a testimony that they have given. That AB has told he has seen Bert and Eddie, Bert has told AB and Ida, and so on. So, just looking at the testimony, the detectives have arrived at a conclusion that one of the professor is lying. So it's like so right now we don't know how he has arrived at such a conclusion, but we will see it later. Then it's like how he has arrived at the conclusion. So he understood that one of the professor is lying. Now the question is that who is that the one who is lying? So definitely whoever is lying must be the thief, right? Otherwise, why he is lying? So in order to solve this mystery, what we had to find is that who was lying in this testimony. So let us try to find it out mathematically. This is like how we. So now let us try whether it has been found mathematically. So what I will do is that I am going to draw a graph corresponding to this testimony first. So in order to solve the mystery, first what we will do is that according to the testimony given, let us try to develop a graph. So how we will develop this graph? How we will construct this graph? So as you can see this, I am using the initials of the first letter of all these professors in order to denote their vertex corresponding to it. So here we can see their A, B, C, D, E, I are their initial. So accordingly, I will create a graph in which the 6 nodes are there, where each of the node denotes the professor. Now the testimony is like, so the testimony graph is created in such a way that we know that AB has seen Bert and Eddie, right? AB has told that he has seen Bert and Eddie. So how will I draw these edges are in such a way that I have drawn an edge from A to E, and the AB has seen Bert and Eddie, right? So from A I will draw an edge which is directed to E and B. So similarly, so in general what I can say about the construction of the edges is that whenever a professor I has seen a professor J, there will be an edge directed from A to J. So this is my condition. For example, take another 2 professor. For example, if Eddie has testified that he has seen Bert and Charlotte, right? So there will be an edge from E to B and Charlotte, which is C. So this is how you will construct a graph. So you can, as you can see, some of the edges are bidirectional. So why is it happen? Why does it happen to be bidirectional? Is that AB, if you take the AB, he has seen Bert and Bert has also seen AB. Like, so if they have seen each other, once they were in the library, if both of them have seen each other, then they will be having a bidirectional. If only one of them has seen the other, then the edges will be one directional. So in this way, we can create the directed testimony graph. So now what I will do is that from this directed testimony graph, I will create an undirected testimony graph. So undirected testimony graph is nothing but ignoring all the edges or ignoring all the directions in the edges. So I will just forget about the direction in each edge. But this A to I E edge will be just replaced by AE edge. Sorry. And if there is even the bidirectional edge is there, then I will be just replace it by a single edge. So if you talk about the undirected testimony graph, it is nothing but whenever there exists an edge joining between I and J, whenever there is an edge between I and J, it actually means that one of I or J has seen the other. In other words, we can say that either I has seen J or J has seen I. Then there will be an edge between I and J. So this is what you call as an undirected testimony graph. Okay, so now let us focus on this undirected testimony graph and try to gather some information. So what we know is that each professor was there in the library for a particular time interval, right? And so it's like for a specific time. They have gone to the library once, and so this is their arrival time and this is their departure time. So each corresponding to each professor, I can assign a time interval. So it's like, and so now if in this way, what does it means is that corresponding to each vertex, I can actually assign a particular time interval, because each vertex denote a professor. Now whenever there exists an edge between 2 vertices, Suppose take J and K. Suppose there is a professor J and there is a professor K, and whenever there exists an edge between J and K in this undirected testimony graph, what does it mean is that either J has seen K or K has seen J, right? This was the condition in which this J and K has an edge in between them. Now, if one of them happens, if either J has seen K or K has to see J, this is only possible in which when their intervals, the departure of J, so this time interval of J should have some intersection with the time interval of K, right? Otherwise, how they can see each other? If they were in the interval for a particular, they were in the library for the, at some point of time they were together in the library. So their intervals must intersect. This is the interval for J and there is the interval for K. There the interval must intersect in order to have this edge in the graph, right? And conversely, if there is no edge between the vertex of corresponding to two professors, which means that neither of them has seen each other. But according to the fact that is known to us, it means that they were not there in the library for at the same time. So their time interval must be disjoint. They were in the library at two different disjoint time intervals. So consolidating all this information, what we can arrive at a conclusion is that this undirected testimony graph must be an interval graph, right? Because it satisfies all the conditions of the interval graph. Each node which denotes a professor can be assigned with a time interval in such a way that whenever there is an edge, their interval intersect, and whenever there is no edge, their time interval is not intersecting. So this is perfect to be included in an interval graph. But is there any problem with that? And it's like, so why can you see something fishy about this graph? It is supposed to be an interval graph, but in fact if you look at closely you can see that it is not an interval. According to, so we have actually characterized interval graph in terms of something, right? So Lecker and Bolland has already characterized that a graph must be an interval graph if and only if it must be chordal and asteroidal triple free. Chordal in the sense there cannot be any cycles of length greater than or equal to 4. But if you look at this undirected testimony graph, you can note something that it was supposed to be an interval graph, but it is not. Why? Because we can see several we can see several cycles over there. For example, if you consider this cycle, look at A, B, I, D is a 4 cycle, which is actually forbidden in an interval graph. So this was supposed to be an interval graph, and how can a cycle can be appear over there? Similarly, there is another, not only this cycle, there are some other cycles as well. For example, A, E, C, D is another cycle. Let me use it a different color for that. For example, A, E, C, D is another cycle that we can see, and similarly there is some other cycle as well. A, E, I, D there is another cycle. So these are the 4 cycles. Note that these 4 are induced cycles only, because there is no edge in between. These diagonal edges are not there. Similarly, the diagonal edges are not here as well, and so these 3 cycles are how come in an interval graph, how come a graph which is expected to be an interval graph, how come these cycles can be there? So this is something fishy about it. So actually this is the reason that detective understood that something, one of the professor must be lying, because a graph should be an interval graph, but it is not, because because it means that some professor is lying. So actually the detective must be should be good at mathematics, right, in order to arrive at such a conclusion. So let us assume that he knew mathematics. So let us come back to our solution. So these are the 4 cycles that we got, which was supposed to be forbidden in the graph, but we got in G. So one thing is quite clear: one of the professor from this 4 cycle must be a liar. So that's why this 4 cycle, it's according to the testimony that we have given by each professor that we have constructed this graph. So if these 4 cycle appear in the graph, it means that one of the professor in this 4 cycle must be a liar. So now what we have to figure it out is that who was the liar, who was this professor which is lying in these cycles. So it is easy to eliminate certain professor very easily, because the condition is that it's like if you look at the professor B, you can see that the professor B is only present in this cycle, and he is not present in any of these 2 cycles. So if he was a liar, then it doesn't matter. So these cycle will remain. Even if he was a liar, these cycle will no matter. His testimony doesn't affect these two cycle, right? So even if he was a liar, these two cycle remains in the graph, which is a bad thing for us. So we can actually easily eliminate those professors which is not there in all the cycle. That is, if since B is not there in these two cycle, we can easily say that B is not a liar. Similarly, I is not there in this cycle, I is missing in this cycle, so we can eliminate I. Similarly, E is missing in this cycle, so we can eliminate E, and I we have already eliminated, and E we have already eliminated. C is missing in this two cycle, so we can eliminate C as well. But there are two people who is present in all the four cycle, if you look at. So that is A and that is one among the B. So definitely from this thing what we can conclude is that either AB or Desmond must be the liar. So as these even, so now we have only two options left. So we had to figure it out whether it is AB or Desmond who is lying. So in order to see that, let us look at the directed testimony graph once again carefully. So if you look at the graph, then I have this cycle, and in the graph itself, see, look at this cycle A, B, I, D, which is a problematic cycle to us. So if you look at this cycle in particular, we can see that the only testimony that A has given in this cycle is that it has seen B. No other testimony is given because B has only given this testimony, D has given these two testimonies. So the only testimony that A has given in this cycle A, B, I, D is that A has seen B. This testimony is actually been verified by B. That is, B has also seen each other. So even if A was a liar, we cannot eliminate this edge from this cycle. This edge will be anyways there. So even if A was lying, that A has seen B, but still as B has been turned out to be truthful person, we are assuming that only one liar is there. So we know that if we are assuming that A is a liar, then rest of all the people must be truthful. So in that case, B will give this testimony. So this edge will be anyways there in the graph. So even if you ignore the testimony of A, the testimony of B will give this edge B and also this edge B, and if the D is a truthful person, then this edge will be there and this edge will be there. So no matter what A is telling, this cycle will remain the same. So what we can conclude that here is that AB, so accusing AB to be a liar won't solve our problem. So we are only left with one person, then we can say that this Desmond must be the liar. Therefore we can conclude that Desmond is a liar. So it is using the forbidden structure of the characterization for the interval graph we could solve this mystery, right? So it's actually one such very simple applications of interval graph that you can see. In the higher level, interval graphs that can be used in series of, there are so many applications of innumerable number of applications of interval graphs that you can see. Even daily life in DNA structure, archaeology, file scheduling, then it's like there are scheduling problems and several others. It's like, so this is not the limited applications of the interval graph, there are many. So you can see more in the references. So I would like to conclude my session by saying this. Okay, so thank you so much for your attention. I hope that you have somewhat got the idea about the interval graphs, and thank you so much once again. These are my references.